Hello, today we're going to talk a little bit about the Faith Activity Badge for the Beavers. Before we start here, I'd like to point out that it's very important to maintain in mind when running any kind of faith-based activities that there will be other Beavers or different members, perhaps even of your adult team of leaders that have a variety of faiths. Unless you are of a sort of single faith scout group, which personally I'm not sure I really sort of gel with. But of course, you run your groups however you'd like to run them. However, I just wanted to make sure that that was mentioned to begin with, and especially in the countries such as the United Kingdom, there's a good amount of the population that simply have no faith at all. Perhaps because they were never brought up in it, or perhaps because they left their faith. So it's certainly important to bear that in mind and be quite sensitive about those kinds of matters when running this badge, even with the beavers, especially because the younger people, such as beavers or cubs, may not have the greatest wherewithal when it comes to asking sensitive questions to people of different faiths, um, especially depending on what they've heard from their particular uh, sort of teachings of their faith, let's say. So we'll just dive right in, and then I'll talk a little bit about how this can relate to a number of different badges we have aside from the faith badge itself. Number one is write a prayer or reflection. Obviously, try to make sure that everyone is involved here. Reflection means pretty much anything that helps someone reflect within themselves about perhaps self-improvement or things they'd like to see changed in the world. And obviously prayer is whatever that means to your particular faith or the Beaver's particular faith. So there's not really any wrong answers here, and that's something to bear in mind if running this activity. There's no requirement for them to state a particular religion or particular god there. Moving on, we have share or read a prayer or reflection. Obviously, you can do this at opening or closing ceremony or some other time. I'd like to mention that there is no world faith badge for the Beavers, unlike there is for the sort of later sections. So this faith badge incorporates both the my faith sort of aspect and the world faith aspect. So in terms of reading this out, again, to be sensitive, it's quite important there. Find and tell a story about you doing your best and helping other people. Things about ways can link to the Beaver Scout Promise. This is obviously quite important, and it's more to do with personal values than it is to do with personal faith or beliefs. Obviously, the two are linked, but regardless of anyone's religion or no religion, some things are innate to all people, or at least some people, such as doing your best and helping other people. So being able to find and tell a story does actually lead into things, I believe, like the creative badge. By doing a performance of some kind, that counts towards the creative activity badge. And I'd say that while telling a story may not encompass a quote-unquote performance, I'd say that it is certainly close enough really to count, in my opinion, towards that. Moving on, we have visit a place of worship and tell other Beaver Scouts about your visit. You could run this as some kind of Beaver activity, but I would just be careful about how parents might react to that kind of thing, especially from certain religions and faiths that prohibit visiting other faiths' sort of places of worship and seeing their idols and such like. Although obviously, sort of your own discretion is advised on this one. And again, as with any badge, anything that Beavers or any other member of Scouting does outside of an official Scouting event can count towards badges. So if they do this individually, perhaps with their parents, it can be their own place of worship or a different one. Or if they have no faith, I would say perhaps be a little lenient on this one. It can be quite difficult for people who are agnostic or atheist to visit something like a church or a mosque. It can be a little bit alienating. Not to obviously imply anything there, but it can be quite difficult. So I'd say that if there's any members of your particular beaver colony that are atheist or no religion, I would probably just sign this off automatically without asking them to do this. Although really that is your own discretion, but you don't want to be that the beaver leader who refuses to give a badge because someone hasn't visited a church. It's more about, as I say, values. We have the Scout values, which override over the promise, the version of the promise you make, and things like that. It's the Scout law and the Scout values are the important thing, and the promise is just a way to exhibit those values. So as long as the beaver in question is cognizant of what they have in their version of the Scout promise, and have reflected on that sufficiently, I'd say they've done enough of this award really to not have to go through that perhaps uncomfortable moment there, especially as a younger person who doesn't really have much of a say in terms of that kind of thing in the first place. And convincing their parents to do such a visit may be more of a challenge than might be otherwise expected. Obviously, it's quite important to make sure that when you are running this activity, that the international community is sort of in mind as well. So if you think a little bit about how this can relate to different cultures as well as different beliefs, and how that relates, and sort of in different parts of the world, there's a more of a primacy of different beliefs and different sort of interactions between them in terms of tolerances or intolerances. Obviously, that's quite a lot for beavers, but it's something to bear in mind, perhaps just touch upon, and to sort of emphasize the fact that regardless of people's beliefs and values, we're all sort of one. We're all human, right? We all have the same beliefs, and particularly people who are inside scouting, we all subscribe to the same values and the same law. So regardless of what faith you are, if you are a member of a Scouts Association or World Scouting, then you are sort of someone who can be trusted and can be kind and helpful, and all the other types of things we have in our Scout values. In terms of moving on to how this can contribute to the Bronze Chief Scouts Award, I would mention specifically the My World Challenge Award, which says as part of that to sort of take part in a worship, reflection or celebration. And I would say that sort of participating in these top two activities would count for that quite easily. Obviously, however you think best to do that, I would say that it would count towards the My World Challenge there. Other than that, there's not too much else that we can link into in terms of the Chief Scouts Bronze Award. Perhaps if you have some way of linking this into songs of some kind, in terms of visiting places of worship where singing is part of the order of business, let's say, by learning a new song and singing that, it can count towards the My Skills Challenge Award too. Other than that, there's not much else I can really give you in terms of badge links or different ideas as to how to run this particular badge. I'd just be careful and run this badge as inclusively as possible, as you may everyone makes assumptions about people and may think that everyone inside their scout unit is of one particular faith, and obviously it is often the case that in a group of 5 or more people, or even 2 or more people, chances are they're not entirely aligned on their particular beliefs and faiths. The main thing to remember is that regardless of what their faiths or beliefs or lack of faiths and beliefs is they've all taken their version of the Scouts or Beaver Promise in this case, as have the leaders. So they all subscribe to the same values that you do, for the most part, at least the ones that matter to scouting and living your life in a manner that befits the Scouts Association. So that's all for now. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye bye.